this is Mattman here, and this will probably be my longest video on this channel. And this is my mom, and this is not my mom. And now let's get back to the video. So this video is gonna cover about 15 to 20 different explorers, which is why it's so long. And I'm gonna skip Columbus and Leif Erikson because I've already talked about them in previous videos. All you basically need to know is that Columbus landed here and he established a colony on this island, which is called Hispaniola. And he also settled parts of Cuba. But it was really the next guy that I'm gonna talk about, Hernan Cortes, who will be a lot more interesting to learn about. So before we talk about Hernan Cortes, you gotta learn about this empire called the Aztecs. You probably know who they are. But the Aztecs, by the way, I'm gonna be drinking this apple cider throughout the video because it is really good. Anyway, the Aztecs were a Mesoamerican empire. Their capital was a city called Tenochtitlan. And the interesting thing about the Aztecs is they were actually kind of late to the party when it came to Mesoamerican empires. And there were many empires that preceded them, like the Toltecs, the Olmecs, the Teotihuacan. I mean, not the Teotihuacanids, and a lot of other empires that preceded the Aztecs. It's just we talk about the Aztecs the most because they were there when the Europeans came. So the Aztecs started out on a lake with 3 cities on this lake, and the 3 cities founded an alliance, which eventually started to become an empire called the Aztec Empire. And actually, the banner or flag of the Aztec Empire incorporated the sigils of each of the 3 cities. And actually, the city that I mentioned before, Tenochtitlan, at one point was one of the largest cities on the earth, which just shows how much all of these people were able to build so quickly. And it just really shows how advanced they were. So, in about 1519, an explorer named Hernan Cortes was hired to go from here, Cuba, this was all under Spanish rule, Cuba, over here to the Aztec Empire. And he landed about here. And the problem with the Aztec Empire is it was very decentralized, and a lot of the warlords and kingdoms wanted independence. So Hernan Cortes made an alliance with these warlords, and that was able to kind of break apart the Aztec Empire even more. And keep in mind that the Aztec Empire's capital, Tenochtitlan, was over here, so it took a lot to get through. And Tenochtitlan is actually in the present-day location of Mexico City. And so once the Aztecs conquered, well, not the Aztecs, but once the Spanish conquered all of this Mexico region, they were kind of unhappy, or at least disappointed, because one of the main reasons why explorers went out and sailed was because of greed. And the problem is that Hernan Cortes in particular wanted lots of gold because he was told about how there was lots of gold in the Aztec Empire. And there was gold, but the gold wasn't as bountiful as the explorers who came to the Aztec Empire expected. So once more people started coming to the Aztec region, that meant that they wanted more gold. And since they weren't given gold, they got mad, so they decided to settle further north. But the thing about further north is there were an indigenous native people living there called the Chichimeca. And the Chichimeca had a lot of silver, and so the Spanish had to fight a very, very long war with the Chichimeca to fight off them and basically just take all the silver for themselves. So they were able to expand their New Spain colony from owning central Mexico to northern Mexico as well, and not even just Mexico. Eventually, the New Spain colony got so big that it de facto controlled this entire area. As I think you can see on the map, that's a lot of land. So, now we can move on to our next explorer, who's named Vasco da Gama. First, I'm going to take a short apple cider break. Okay, like I said, next explorer is named Vasco da Gama. He was a Portuguese explorer, and he is famous for being the first person to link Europe and Asia by an ocean route. So the first thing, you're going to need a little context, and this is actually the main reason why all of these people explored, not just Vasco da Gama or Hernan Cortes. But Vasco da Gama really wanted to find an ocean route to India, and so did Columbus, and so did Hernan Cortes, and so did all these people. Because the main goal of all of these conquistadors, as they'd be later called, was to get to Asia. And Columbus thought that they could go around the world, but that ended up not happening. Vasco da Gama, who explored in his voyage to India from 1497 to 1499, had a different idea. He would go from Portugal, which I'm going to say is like right here next to Spain, all the way around the tip of Africa to get to India. Sure, it was longer and it took him 2 years to do it, but it was worth it because he ended up linking Europe so much to Asia that it ended up causing an entirely new set of explorations in the Spice Islands, present-day Indonesia, the Philippines, and other ports in East Asia, even China, Japan, and Korea. So this guy is known as a very good, well, not good exactly, very influential explorer who went to Asia and Africa because he was the first one to map the coast of Africa completely and map a lot of the coast of India, and it gave Europeans a good idea of what India was actually about. So Vasco da Gama, he's still pretty well known, but definitely not as well known as Hernan Cortes, and miles away from Christopher Columbus in fame. So next we got a fairly unknown explorer named Sir Francis Drake. And Sir Francis Drake was actually a pirate. Well, he was partially a pirate. And the thing about Sir Francis Drake is he was the first person to map the western coast of the Americas. So he explored South America, North America, parts of California. Just quick cider break. Woo! I finally finished my cider. Thanks, Mommy. Okay, anyways, again, back to Francis Drake. He went through the passage that was eventually going to be called the Drake Passage between Antarctica and the southern tip of South America, which was a very dangerous voyage, and eventually Ferdinand Magellan would do the same thing. These people were so scared of Francis Drake that he was known as a pirate by the Spanish. And the King Philip II of Spain was so scared of this guy that he offered a reward of 20,000 ducats for anyone who could capture or kill Sir Francis Drake, which is a lot in modern currency. Drake sailed across the western coast of the Americas, as I previously said. He also tried to claim New Albion, which is a area that is in present-day California, for England. It's in modern day California, like I said, in Marin County. He tried to claim that for the English, but not everything worked out. He also inaugurated an era of conflict with the Spanish due to his piracy and ways that led him to eventually get captured. And he basically, what you need to know about this guy is he had a lot of fun exploring the western coast of North America. Sorry, I might have gone a little off topic with that one. But let's get to the next explorer, who is Henry Hudson. Henry Hudson explored for the Netherlands, and he was the first one to explore not the first one, but one of the first ones to explore the New York region. I actually made an entire video about the New York area and the Dutch and how they colonized it. But since he sailed for the Netherlands created a small colony on the southern end of the Hudson River. He also reached the Hudson Bay, and the Hudson Bay is also named after him. And his ship was called the Half Moon. And again, I'm not going to talk about him too much because I already have a video about him. You can go watch that if you want. Next explorer that we're going to talk about is who was previously mentioned, Ferdinand Magellan. And Ferdinand Magellan was the first explorer to circumnavigate the globe. So he is really important with his exploration, and he was, like I said, the first person to circumnavigate the Earth. But he also was the first he sailed for Spain, by the way. He was the first European to reach colony and establish settlements in the Philippines, parts of South America, and of course, parts of India as well. So, at the time, the race to circumnavigate the Earth was on, and Spain really wanted to take advantage of that. And he was selected by King Charles I of Spain to search for a westward route to the Spice Islands in Indonesia, and as a side task to circumnavigate the globe. He commanded 5 vessels through the Atlantic Ocean through Patagonia, and he took the same route that Francis Drake would later use around the tip of South America. He unfortunately was killed during the Battle of Macatan by Philippine natives in 1521. So unfortunately, since he was born in 1480, he only lived 41 years. You'll notice that a lot of these explorers died pretty young because of things like scurvy and dying to the native peoples of the area if they were hostile, and other diseases that were unknown to Europeans, actually. So you'll notice that a lot of these explorers died kind of young. Next on our list is Juan Ponce de Leon. Now, this guy is a very unknown explorer. He's definitely not the most unknown explorer on this list, but he is a lot less known than some other people who are on this list. Juan Ponce de Leon was an explorer who served as the first governor of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is an island that's supposed to be right here. I guess I just forgot to add it to my map. And he was a Spanish explorer. He also circumnavigated a lot of the Caribbean Ocean. And actually, the capital of Puerto Rico, San Juan, well, not San Juan, is it San Juan? I think it's San Juan. I'm going to guess it's San Juan. I don't really know all of these capitals off the top of my head, even though I probably should. He was the first, I think his name, Juan Ponce de Leon, that was his full name. I'm pretty sure that his name is in the city of San Juan. I should probably look that up after this video just to check. Anyways, he also went and explored more of La Florida, which is what the name for Florida was, and he claimed the southern tip of Florida for Spain. He also landed in the Keys, and he mostly explored in the Caribbean. So he was basically, if Columbus explored more, he was basically like Columbus, but because he explored in the Caribbean, but he explored a lot more of the Caribbean than Columbus ever did, even though that Columbus did discover a lot of the Caribbean for Spain. Okay, a bit off topic there again. Sorry guys, I'm just getting a little off topic because I'm excited for this video. And maybe this actually won't be my longest video because we're already about maybe halfway done with the explorers. But the next explorer on our list is going to be Francisco Pizarro. Francisco Pizarro was an explorer who is famous for conquering the Inca Empire. The Inca Empire was kind of like the Aztec Empire. It was the leading empire in South America, and it was in the Andes Mountains, modern-day Peru, Chile, Bolivia, and Ecuador. And it was actually the largest empire in terms of land in the Americas, and because of that, it was very prized in terms of the wealth of it and all of that. And the thing that the Inca Empire was really famous about was its silver. And again, this is another explorer that is very greedy in his doings. So he was driven by greed to conquer this area. Francisco Pizarro was also the first governor of New Castile, which is the colony that was in modern-day Peru that he set up in the area. Francisco Pizarro came through Colombia and the Isthmus of Panama, and he reached the northern tip of the Inca Empire in the 1530s. He ended up fighting the Incan Empire Atahualpa at the Battle of Cajamarca in November 1532. He killed Atahualpa during the battle. The Inca Empire was also very unstable even before Pizarro came because of the smallpox epidemic that was spreading all around the Americas. The previous emperor before Atahualpa had died, and there was a brief civil war which Pizarro decided to take advantage of by not only killing Atahualpa, but taking over the entire Inca Empire. He also entered the Inca capital of Cuzco in the same year, and in 1535, he founded the city of Lima. Francisco Pizarro also was famous for accomplishing, not famous exactly, but he accomplished taking over the Andes Mountains, which is a very good geographic stronghold. Also, keep in mind, I should probably mention while we're on the topic of South America and the Americas in general, that a couple years, during this entire age of exploration thing that was happening, there was a treaty that was going on between Spain and Portugal, the two main colonizers, called the Treaty of Tordesillas. And the Treaty of Tordesillas was signed by the Pope. It was a treaty that basically said that all of the Americas except for Brazil would be under under Spain's administration, and all of Asia except for parts of the Spice Islands and Australia would be under Portugal's administration. Other countries did not follow this, but it was just an agreement between Spain and Portugal to keep things clean and avoid things like a conflict in South America. And that's actually one of the main reasons that little part of South America that I talked about a little while ago, that's actually one of the main reasons why Pedro Alvarez Cabral is going to be a character in this story. Pedro Alvarez Cabral is the guy who colonized Brazil for not Spain. He was actually a Portuguese explorer. So he reached Spain in the Bahia area, and he initially thought it was actually a large island. But when he found out more contact with the native peoples there, he reached Brazil and set up a colony there. He probably was not the first person to reach Brazil, however, but we know that he was the first to colonize it for the Portuguese crown. And he also was one of the explorers along with Vasco da Gama, who we mentioned earlier, who was involved in the further colonization of Africa, India, and the Greater Spice Islands. So all you really need to know about him is that he colonized Brazil for Portugal. The interesting thing about Brazil is that Brazil was on the Portuguese side of the Treaty of Torrdisillas. So anyway, it was totally fine for Cabral to just go over there and colonize it, because it would not technically be a violation of the treaty. The interesting thing, though, is that eventually the treaty kind of fell out of use, because the colonizers who had eventually found Brazil explored deep into Spanish claimed territory, so the treaty kind of just fell into irrelevancy, sorry for mispronouncing that, by the early 1600s, and it just was never talked about again. So that's why we have Brazil in the modern shape it is. Okay, the next explorer is a explorer known as Jean Cabot. I think his name is Jean Cabot. It might be John Cabot. I'm pretty sure it's Jean Cabot. He explored for England, and he was the first Englishman to reach the Americas. He was a Catholic priest. I'm pretty sure he might have been a Protestant priest. All I know is that he was definitely in the business of spreading religion. And he was sent by Queen Elizabeth I, not Queen Elizabeth II, to explore the western coast of Canada. And not western coast, I meant eastern coast, sorry. And not even just the western coast of Canada, also the western coast of... Why do I keep saying western? Eastern coast of the United States, sorry. And he reached them in 1497 and reached places like Cape Bonavista, Newfoundland, which is another place in Newfoundland. Newfoundland is the island that Leif Erikson, the Viking explorer, landed on, by the way. He reached Cape Bonavista, Newfoundland in 1497. He mapped out the eastern coast of North America and was one of the primary factors for England setting up colonies in places like Newfoundland, Labrador, Virginia, and Massachusetts. So definitely an important milestone in the history of exploration. Okay, next explorer. This video is going to be a lot shorter than I thought it would be. Next explorer is named Jacques Cartier, and he was a French explorer, I believe. Jacques Cartier was a explorer. He was French, I'm pretty sure. Well, he was French. I'm not sure if he explored for France or not. I'm pretty sure he colonized parts of Canada. Yes, I'm looking at it. He did. He was French. He explored for France. And yes, okay, now I can provide some facts about him. So, Jacques Cartier sailed up the St. Lawrence River, which is a big river in North America, and he reached places like Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Islands, and he named the area along the Gulf of St. Lawrence the country of Canadas, which was named after the Iroquoian term Canada, and Canada is a term in Iroquoian which means village, which was referring to the local Native American Huronian villages in the area. Jacques Cartier was the first European to describe and map the Gulf of St. Lawrence and the shores of the St. Lawrence River, and he obviously did also, well, not obviously, he also did commission the Florentine explorer Giovanni Da Verrazano, who is actually next up on our list. So I guess I should talk about him now. Giovanni Da Verrazano, sorry, it's not Verrazano, it's Verrazano, explored for France as well. And similar to Jacques Cartier, he basically did the same thing. He explored the eastern coast of North America, except he had a different situation than Jacques Cartier, because Jacques Cartier colonized the Quebec area, but Giovanni Da Verrazano colonized the east, well, not colonized, but mapped the eastern coast of North America. So he went to places like New York's Upper Bay and Massachusetts and Nova Scotia. And he also had circumnavigated for France before this, under, like I mentioned before, the leadership of Jacques Cartier. And that's pretty much all I have to say about Giovanni Da Verrazano. Also, fun fact, there's a bridge in New York City named the Verrazano Native Bridge. Narrowest Bridge. And it's actually named after this guy, Giovanni Da Verrazano. And that's why, it's called that, because he sailed through the Upper Bay of New York. So, fun fact, maybe you knew, maybe you didn't. Okay, next is Francisco Vasquez de Coronado, and he is a very unknown explorer to most people. Definitely not as famous as some of the other ones. And yes, he was a Spanish explorer, and he was famous for exploring the area around the Grand Canyon and the Colorado River. And he was actually the first European to sight the Grand Canyon and the Colorado River. He also tried to reach through parts of present-day Kansas and the southwestern United States between 1540 and 1542. He was basically a North American explorer for Spain. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to found many settlements because the natives in most of the Great Plains region, which he was passing through, were more hostile than the natives down south in the Caribbean and the southern United States. He was also trying to reach the mythical seven cities of gold, which was not called that at the time. And he was also trying to reach El Dorado. He was a very productive guy when it came to exploring North America. And he also actually established a small settlement in what's now present-day Kansas. So he's actually responsible for basically Spain being able to map this entire general area. Unfortunately, for Spain at least, the French had already gotten to the area and established their own colony known as Louisiana, named after their king, Louis XIV. So the next explorer, and wow, we're actually almost done. I'm surprised this video turned out way shorter than I expected. It will at least be over 30 minutes. The next explorer, and actually the second to last explorer, is Samuel de Champlain. Samuel de Champlain was a French explorer, and he, similar to the other French explorers, Verrazano and Jacques Cartier, was interested in exploring North America. Definitely the best interests of France were definitely in North America. France only founded two colonies in the Caribbean and one colony in South America. He went through the Iroquois area in North America, and he founded a settlement north of Florida known as Port Royal. He also created the settlement that would eventually become St. John in New Brunswick and the French settlement that is now Quebec City. So he established a lot of settlements in that area. He made the first accurate coastal map. I say accurate because there were many more before this of North America, and he's an important figure in Canadian history and French history as well. Not much to say about this guy either. The last explorer on my list is Hernando De Soto. And Hernando De Soto is another pretty not known explorer, unknown explorer, and he was one of the explorers that colonized not Portugal, because Portugal is in Europe. I meant the southeastern United States. So basically the deep south Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and most likely Arkansas. He is the first European documented as having crossed the Mississippi River. There's actually many counties in the United States, specifically in Florida, that are called De Soto, named after him, mostly in the South. And he was also involved in expeditions in Nicaragua and the Yucatan Peninsula, and like Francisco and Vasquez de Coronado before him, as well as Juan Ponce de Leon, he expanded the Spanish hold further in Florida, which is in the modern-day United States. He's the last explorer on our list. Okay, before the video ends here, just a quick shout-out. Just a quick shout-out to some explorers that weren't on the list because I felt like the video would get a little too long. One of the explorers that is in this category is some of the Arctic explorers like Robert Peary and some of the Antarctic explorers who are a little less well known. If you want, I can do other videos about Arctic explorers, Antarctic explorers, Asian explorers, African explorers, or Australian explorers. But this is where the video has to end because this has become 31 minutes. So, let's take it from here. Here's my mom and my dog, stars of the show. This is Madman Productions, signing off.